As you know, we love public education. Each candidate will get a 2-minute opening statement, 2-minute response to each question, and a 1-minute closing statement. If time allows, there will also be a lightning round section where we'll mention a topic or issue, and candidates will simply respond yes or no. Note that this is not a formal debate, but rather our opportunity to learn what makes you distinctive as our representative on the school board from the Democratic Party. Are there any questions? All right, well, please take note. We won't be able to take questions from the audience or via the chat as our time with the candidates is limited. However, if you have a question we don't address, we encourage you to contact the candidates directly afterwards. After the forum, we will ask eligible members of the club to stay tuned to their email as an OPA ballot will be coming through for you to vote on the club's endorsement. And we need a quick turnaround on this one because, as I mentioned, 28 days. So. Oh, excuse me, 26 days. Wow. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started with opening statements. 2 minutes to hear who you are, why you're running, and why we should vote for you.
All right, can you hear me? Yes. Great. Well, my name is Joyce Boyd, and I want to thank the Democratic Club for holding this forum and all of you for attending. So I want to start by introducing myself as a parent. I have two children who have gone through the school district, and right now one child at Alameda High School. So when my daughter started at Payton Elementary, I got right to work getting involved because I wanted our families and our students and the school to have the resources they needed. And so I became a room parent, I joined the PTA, and in a couple of years, I was part of the school site council. So as my children went through the district, I remained on the PTA. So Myelin, Payton, Wood, Alameda High School. My children have also been in 2 of the charter schools, which is NIA and ACLC. I'm also part of the citywide PTA, and 2 years ago, the board appointed me to be on the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, and the committee recently elected me to be the chairperson. I also want to talk about my career, which I think has also made me the right person.
All right, let's do that because it's sorry.
I was going to say that I'm a certified public accountant, and my career has been devoted to nonprofits. So my specialty is affordable housing and youth. I've worked for the Girl Scouts, of Northern California. And I also want to say that my children are getting a little older, so I've reached the stage where I don't have to worry about are all of us going to get enough sleep tonight. And so it's made some room in my life to take on another commitment for the schools, and for me, that would be being a school board member. Thank you.
So I'm going to stand up. Thank you so much. When you have 30 seconds, I'll hold this up. And then when it's time, I'll stand up and make this really gentle. Okay? Thank you.
All right, Malia. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I always like talking about education. My name is Malia Hall. I'm also known as Miss Hall or Coach Hall. I have taught for over 2 decades. I've been a special education teacher. I also have taught in the general education setting as well as a math teacher, as a reading specialist, as a math intervention specialist. And I believe that Alameda Unified School District will benefit from the many years of experience that I have working with students in the classroom. One of my focuses for my campaign is Safe Schools. As a student in high school, my high school was one of the earlier high schools that had a school shooting. And from that, I've been dedicated, ever since I experienced that as a young person, I've been dedicated to
Meredith mentioned, I am representing Heather tonight. Focusing on the students that need the most resources and building that around our strategic plan that we have in the school district. Heather has always dedicated her life to service in Alameda and wants to continue that in a second term. If you remember Slow Down in Town, that was Heather, and she did that with the Alameda Peeps to kind of deal with the idea that we needed safer routes to school. So in her absence, I know she's upset right now because she's watching I'm not wearing a scarf. I told her to wear like a scarf that she likes to wear. I will represent her tonight in the conversation.
And I am Jen Williams. I'm currently the president of the AUSD Board of Education, and I think the question for voters in this election is the school district headed in the right direction? And I think the answer to that is a resounding yes. Probably getting here today, you saw many of our schools being upgraded through a facilities bond, making sure we're offering 21st century learning across the district. We have a thriving transitional kindergarten program. We're now offering full day kindergarten after making some really hard financial decisions to support that. We've just recently did curriculum upgrades in math and social studies and ethnic studies. This year for the first time we're offering AP African American Studies. Our literacy rates for the first time in decades is improving for our Black students. That's a statistic that I'm incredibly proud of. We have strong relationships in place with Alameda Family Services, who's literally in every school in our school district, making sure that the mental health needs of all of our kids are at the forefront of the work that we do. My professional job is I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law for over 32 years. I'm an administrative law judge for the city and county of San Francisco. I had the pleasure of working with outside counsel in recent litigation in AUSD regarding Measure A that we were successful in. That resulted in a published decision that allows every school district across the state of California to fashion parcel taxes as we do here. I'm incredibly proud of that work as well. We have fiscal responsibility here. We have labor peace. We just recently passed a contract with our labor folks helping to cover healthcare costs. I work on an amazing board with amazing people, and I would love to do this work for another 4 years and have your support tonight. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. Great, thank you all so much. All right, first question is easy one. In your opinion, what are 1 to 2 areas or policies that the current school board and district is doing well? And what's one area that needs a little more work? And we're gonna start with Malia on this one and then do Joyce left.
I would say one policy that is going well is a collaboration with administration and paraprofessionals. I think that there's a strong relationship between the union and administrative staff. The reason why this is so critical is because when you work in the field of special education, every student has specific needs. And oftentimes, the administrators may not always know that there's certain concerns happening in the classroom. Having paraprofessionals speak directly with administrators once a month, I believe is something that should be replicated across the nation, to be honest with you. I think it helps to provide safer classrooms and a more efficacious experience for all students. Secondly, I believe the work, I really appreciate the presentation yesterday for the LGBTQ plus community. I appreciate the data. I appreciate the focus on making sure that all of our students feel welcomed, that all of our students feel acknowledged. I think that I appreciate the focus on data and making sure that we understand the needs within our community. Thirdly, in terms of what I believe that we could do better, I do know that in terms of making sure that we're meeting the goal of having 80% of our students CSU ready, we are not there right now. Students who are unhoused are at 6.7% meeting those standards, while other students are at 80%. I know that Alameda can come together to address that concern, to make sure that all students are CSU ready upon graduation.
So this might be a little unfair because I do chair the sub-policy committee for the district right now, and Heather sits on our schools city subcommittee, but I can answer that resoundingly with every meeting we have. There are completely new policies coming from the state that we as a district have to figure out how to implement and integrate into the culture that we've created as a district. So some that we're doing really good on, I would say that we are on the forefront of when it comes to our hate speech and bullying. We just had a huge change in how we were dealing with all those when it comes to our policies. Plus, there's also a thing called the AR, which is actually the writing of how the district handles that policy. So it's the direction that we give to employees and how to implement that policy. Unlike at the state level, they'll just write policy and then hand it to us. It's our job to decide how to implement it and how to implement it best as a district. I think that we're really improving that and in strengthening that every time that we meet, finding those nuances. And I'll say that I think the area that we are probably weak in and that we're going to be addressing and talking about and actually building an ad hoc committee to deal with is the governor just signed a policy around cell phone use within in our classrooms. And so we now have to figure out how to implement that as a district across the district-wide and work with teachers. So we're going to be creating an ad hoc committee that will be chaired by the policy subcommittee to work with parents and teachers and students over the next year to figure out how to actually do that, because I'm a parent that wants my student to have access to a cell phone if there's a case of emergency, and that's all the state says. They don't define what an emergency is. And so I think that's really important for us to have that. And then also AI and how its effects within the classroom. Some teachers are utilizing it and teaching students how to use it responsibly. But I also think we have to have a policy in how it integrates within our grading system if students happen to use AI.
One of the things I think we're doing well is working on the budget. We have decided to bring a budget item to a monthly meeting, a board meeting, so that we're being very transparent about the choices that we make. The healthcare coverage that I mentioned in my opening statement is about a $4.3 million hit to the school district on an annual basis. We are going to have to find other ways to come up with that money, and being transparent in that work and working with the community to figure out what financial decisions we need to make and move around so that we stick to the value of giving our staff healthcare support. We're going to need to do moving forward. But the fact that we're doing it on a monthly basis and being incredibly transparent about it, I think is a great thing, and it's not what other districts around us are doing. So I'm very proud of that. I'm also very proud of the outcomes that we're seeing for our African American kids. When I ran initially in 2016, I have biracial children, and I wanted better outcomes for them. That was one of the reasons I ran. And we are finally, 8 years later, starting to see improvements in literacy outcomes, improvements in attendance. And that work, I think we really decided to put financial resources behind. We hired Shamar Edwards. She's amazing. She oversees our African American achievement and support. We have a scholar program that's providing targeted intervention for our African American kids. And we're also going to be implementing a literacy program this year that I'm super excited about. What we can work on, Island High, is our continuation high school. This year we are going to be looking at a new model for our continuation high school. We've put together a committee, and I'm very excited about having a more robust educational experience there for our students who attend school there.
Thank you. I would say in my campaign and talking to a lot of parents, their number one priority is, can my kids read and can my kids do math? Now, when I look at what I think the district is doing well, in the strategic plan, the district is very focused on making sure that our kids are literate by the 3rd grade. And I want to thank the school board for really focusing on that, because for our students from kindergarten to 3rd grade, they are learning to read. And from 4th grade on, they are reading to learn. And there's research that shows that where you are in the 3rd grade can often track to where you are when you graduate. So I think that I would want to continue exactly what the school board is doing with that. And I think they're coming up with very creative ideas on how to address that. Now, when I look at what I'd like to do different, it's something that the board's doing already that I think that could be done better. And that's sort of on the other end of academics. And Malia, it's something that you mentioned, which is that as our kids are graduating, we want them both to be, if they want to go to college, as Malia said, we want to have those kids able to get into the CSU system. But also not every kid is going to go to college. And that we need to have partnerships, particularly with the skilled trades. And I know last year there was a forum where the kids could come and find out more about that. And I'd like to have that expanded, and I'd like to make sure that that's publicized and that we have those pathways for our students who are not college bound. And I'll also mention I'd like more AP classes and more a transparent process for how kids get into AP classes. So thank you.
Great, thank you all. Well, this one is probably top of mind for all of us. But after the heat wave this past week, many teachers and parents, myself included, became aware of the impact of climate change on our schools. Some report classroom temps in the 80s, blacktop Playgrounds were scorching, canceling of sports practices, and people are not feeling a sense of urgency on this from the district, and temps are continuing to rise rapidly. The Washington Post recently published an article about how school districts, including here in California, are taking action, starting with ripping up concrete playgrounds and replacing with green space to cool school properties. We're aware there's a new district-wide climate committee, which seems a good start. What is your stance on the need, and how are you going to make sure the job gets done? We are out of time. And we'll start with Heather Little.
Very apropos, thank you for the question. As someone who lives in a house with air conditioning, I too was very uncomfortable last week. There's many components here, and I was actually talking with the principal of Love Elementary this morning on their walk and roll event that they had to school today. And I made the pitch to the students at the school saying, these are the types of things that we have to do in order to reduce the climate change that we are seeing in the hotter zone to a more cooler zone by reducing our carbon footprint. So when I was talking with the principal, I was talking about how COVID pulled back a veil on where we were deficient when it came to technology within a school district, where our students weren't in the 21st century when it came to computers and being computer literate enough to have their own laptop, know how to use Google Classroom, and our teachers were behind. Other school districts were way ahead of us in that, and we've kind of figured that out. A lot of that is because of resources. We are very unique when it comes to school districts in that we have a very low threshold of unduplicated students compared to other school districts, which means we have a low number of students who speak a second language or are homeless or have free and reduced lunch. So that means we get less money, and we have to rely on parcel taxes and property taxes, which is a small fund for us as well. And so it's going to be one of those difficult decisions, as we always have to do as a board, of here's the pot of money and here are the things that we need to do with this money, and making those tough decisions. And so it's going to be a tough decision to decide, will 10 days of heat counteract something such as a renovation at Kaufman Auditorium for our artist students, our dancers, our performers? Will it be better than a new gymnasium at Lincoln, and that they'll just have to continue with their multipurpose room? It's one of those things where we as a board have to have those hard decisions before us, and we make those hard decisions as we've done in the past, and it's something that we're going to have to conquer in the next couple of years.
I would first say that all of the upgrades that we're doing across the district are adding air conditioning to all of our classrooms that are coming online. So we are making progress in that work. This week we disseminated huge industrial-sized fans to 3 of our warmest school campuses to try and mitigate the heat. But as Ryan indicated, adding air conditioning to a school that's not going through a major upgrade is really expensive. We just added 7 classrooms, just to give you guys an idea, 7 classrooms with AC added at the Child Development Center over on the west side of town, and it cost over $3 million just to do 3 classrooms. So it's very expensive, and we need to find a way, right, to come up with the money and do, you know, where are we going to find the money, and what is going to be lacking in that process. I will say that Superintendent Scuderi and I made an executive decision so that on our next board meeting on October 22nd, we are going to be talking about a heat mitigation plan, both for short-term problems and long-term problems, so that we can get community input, staff input, and really start taking a close look at how climate change is impacting our classrooms.
Thank you. Well, I have to say I agree with what Ryan, Heather, and Jen said here. I think they gave a lot of good information to the group here. I want to say, and I also really appreciate that the new buildings will have air conditioning. Thank you. I want to say that the way this has particularly affected my family is my son is on the football team, and they practice at Thompson Field. And I know when I look at the weather report in Alameda, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon is when it's hottest. And I imagined him out in that field, and if you've been there, there aren't any trees there. You've got a bunch of boys. They're all in their uniforms out there, and they're working hard. It was the particular area of sports that I was concerned with. And I want to say, I think the school district did a really good job taking care of those boys. They made sure that they took breaks. They made sure they had water. They took temperatures to make sure it was safe for them to be out there, because I think, as we've all heard, there are other districts where we've had student deaths because of that. So I particularly want to thank the athletic team for them taking care of our students in this really difficult time. I also wanted to mention, I know that with thank you for the 30 seconds, that, that we're on an island. And again, we have the rising waters. And I know as we're building these new buildings that those things such as earthquakes, which we also have here, and rising waters are being taken into consideration. And again, it's a thank you to the school board for doing that.
I'd like to first talk about finances. What we value is where we will spend our money. Yesterday, they approved a contract that, for a law firm, that can go up to over $1,000 an hour. I think it was $1,010 an hour for the law firm. I'm a little bit concerned about that. Sometimes legal costs can get out of hand, and I've seen it in many school districts, so I would really like, as a director on the school board, I would keep an eye on that. I also advocated in another school district that I worked in to have a budget committee special session. And what they did is they actually looked at every single contract they had, and they had an open meeting, and it happened over a span of 6 months. And they went line by line over every line item. We are going to have to do that with our budget. Not only because we're not going to get $150,000, that funding ends in 2025, so we're going to be short some money there, but also because climate change is real. And having our students be safe and our teachers be safe is incredibly important. I'd also like to, some notes. I'd also like to say that I have worked in school districts and have worked with non-for-profits that plant trees for free. So I have been a part of that. I also was on West County Digs, which is a school gardening program, and we have wonderful school gardens in every single school in West Contra Costa. I also opened a nursery when I worked with students who in the transition age, so adults with special needs. We had a garden there. I started the garden with them, and they actually were able to sell plants, and it was an entrepreneurial project. And I think we should consult with OSHA for the committee that Jennifer referred to, because they have a consultancy. And I think that we need shade structures. I was told by a parent that we can't have shade structures because the district said for whatever reason we can't. Now, students with disabilities, many of them can't be in the sun because of medicine that they're on, so I think that's important to look at.
Thank you all very much. All right, we're going to turn to special education. We hear from the community the need and enrollment for special education is rising. Parents of students with special needs often express concerns about adequate resources and individualized support. However, some say there aren't enough paraprofessionals and related service providers to meet the need. How do you intend to improve special education services within AUSD, ensure compliance with IEPs, and address the staffing and resources in this crucial area? And we're going to start with Jennifer, or excuse me, Jen.
2 years ago, I was board president, we actually put together a committee and had our special ed director come to one meeting a month over a 6-month period of time and pick a specific area in special ed and talk to us about it and figure out ways to do it better. As a result of that, our IEP compliance increased by over 50%. So we are working on, working hard to increase our IEP compliance. But special ed is one of the most difficult areas in our budget. Right now, about $29 million, almost 30% of our budget goes to special education costs.
We have a higher number of special ed students here than other outlying districts around us. We are known as a destination district for a lot of families who have children with special needs. And we're constantly struggling with the cost of that and trying to be resourceful in the way that we deliver services, but still complying with the law and the service requirements that students who have special needs are legally entitled to. Just last night in our board meeting, the superintendent talked about the fact that this year we are putting together a task force to really take a closer look about the delivery of services and if there's a better way economically to meet the needs of students, to not go straight to an IEP, for example, but make sure that we are offering whatever interim services there are available that may be more cost effective, that still meet the needs of kids. So we are constantly looking at special education, but it is an area that we need to work on and dedicate time to. And I think that the more we talk about it in a transparent way and educate the community about the challenges that we face, that all districts face, including the hiring of paraprofessionals, we can come together and come up with a better collective plan.
And I want to say, again, I'm thanking here Ryan, Heather, and Jen for that presentation about the way that the school district is looking at special education. Again, I think there's a lot of creativity brought by the superintendent and the board to looking at these items. Now, I want to talk about my own personal experience with this first. I've asked my son if I can disclose this. He has an IEP and has been in special education for the last 10 years. And so I've seen it as a parent from the inside and gone through IEPs and also took the district to mediation at one point. I've always wondered if I had a special file marked as troublesome parent, you know, one who will advocate and speak up. So I've seen what it is from the inside, and I've also, in being in the district for 20 years, have seen the different changes in philosophy, seeing the different services, everything from models where the kids were put into special day classes versus kids having push-in services. And I can see, having been in that at different times it's meant different things. I've also known that with my daughter, there was a time she fell behind, and I have particularly liked the idea the school boards has been expressing of doing, say, a concentrated 6-week program, because you want to know that if your kid falls behind, we were fortunate in that we had the $1,000 to hire a tutor to get her caught up. We didn't have to go to the IEP process to do that, but not every family does. And so I'm aware of the difficulties financially of the district providing these services. I think we must serve our kids, and I'm very excited to be part of the new direction the district is taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, for speaking up. As a special education teacher, I closely have worked with parents, families, and students to make sure that their needs are met, and staff. I still receive phone calls from across the Bay Area from families asking for advice and for support. And so as a special education teacher, I will say continue to speak up. So one of the concerns that I've addressed already is safety. There's upwards of 30% at times. Injuries to staff can be as high as 30% in some special education settings. Not all, but in some. And so if we want to have staff and to retain staff, we have to make sure they have safe environments to work in. Now, how do we do that? You do that by having excellent training around behavior language, behind asset-based language, behind behavior management, behind a deep understanding of disabilities. For example, I had a student who is visually impaired, and he told me that in high school, his teachers, before he transferred to the high school that I was a resource teacher at, he told me that his teachers told him, you don't have to worry about math, because they were not trained in terms of how to teach someone who is visually impaired math. He wanted to go to a CSU. So what did I do? I learned how to support him. And he graduated from that high school, and he graduated from a CSU. How do we get there? Training. How do we get there? Making sure that students get intervention early. It's not about having them go into 504s first necessarily. It means intervening early. If they need the support, intervene early, promote inclusion, give them the skills they need to be successful, and then they can, at times, exit out of special education into a more least restrictive environment.
I have navigated this roller coaster of special education with our family too. My son and his IEP, and I had good experiences at AUSD and negative experiences, and I bring that all to the board, and have had those conversations on a friendship level with Heather all along the way, which is one of the reasons why I supported her in her first run. It really depends on the type and quality of the staff that you bring on. As Malia was talking about, and making sure that we're recruiting and retaining those individuals, which is extremely difficult. Filling those roles of paraprofessionals while we're offering full health care for the first time in this last year. And I will say there's maybe one other school district in the East Bay that is offering full health care to teachers and paraprofessionals and staff. It is a recruitment tool. We also have to make sure that they have the time to be collaborative and work together. I mean, when it comes to special education at AUC, we have students that are in special day classes, we have IEPs, we have 504s, and then we have a mixture of all those in-betweens. And so every student has an individual education plan. So that means it's individualized to their needs. And you can imagine that all the needs for every individual is very, very different. And creating those resources and systems in order to support them is really difficult. I will say that we have to be creative in that, as Jen was alluding to, that we're going to have making some interesting decisions and trying out things to see how it works for our district. This last year, we did something that other districts haven't done, which is we brought in 14 student teachers to be paraprofessionals from the Philippines, so that we sponsored their visa and work visa to come here, and they are part of our community now, working and living here and helping our students, and at the same time developing their skills to be a special education teacher. We're the only district to be doing that, and I think that shows our creativity and finding the resources when there's very little out there.
Our new timekeeper is the lovely and talented Jen Bodie. He's going to use a different technique, you'll just have to kind of guess what it is. It's really similar to what I do.
Is it as violent as the...
All right, thank you all. Okay, a topic we've asked you before, but it continues to be an issue. The housing costs in Alameda and how that impacts teachers and students attending our schools. We were excited at the passing of Measure E. Many in this room knocked on doors for that campaign and the bump in teacher pay. But rents and housing costs risk us having great teachers and admin talent living where they work. So two-part question. How is AUSD continuing to partner with the City of Alameda to address this? And what are we doing to recruit and retain great teacher talent with this issue?
Thank you. Yeah, I have to say, because for our kids, the best things we can have are retaining and having the best teachers here. And I probably, like many other families, know the struggle of trying to live in Alameda. I have to say I was I actually purchased my home as a single mother with another single mom, and we bought a little house together. So I know those struggles, and I know what it is to eat beans and rice while you make sure you can pay your mortgage. Now, a couple of things I want to say about it is, one, you had mentioned the city, and I think that the relationship between the school district and the city is very important to work together as partners. I also know that the school district a number of years ago actually had looked at the issue, or I should say there are other districts who have specifically built housing for teachers. Now, as I said, my background is in affordable housing. It's what I've been doing for 20 years. And I know the school district a number of years ago looked at this and it didn't pencil out at the time. I would be very interested in taking a look at that again, because again, I think as Ryan Heather mentioned, you know, when you do recruiting, you've got to have sort of a package of things that bring teachers in, bring paraprofessionals in, bring your classified staff in. And it's something I'd like us to look at again and see if that pencils out. And I know there's a bond measure for school buildings, and I think there should be a bond measure for housing for teachers. So, thank you.
So this is a very important topic to me. I lived in Alameda in the early 2000s. I had my goddaughter with me and her son. And I could not afford to live here. I was a teacher at that time. I had to leave. It was cheaper for me to pay for a place for her to live and pay for a place for me to live, like, you know, 2 different studios in Oakland, than it was for me to stay in Alameda as a teacher. Now I'm able to run for school board because of a program called Alameda County Boost. They gave me a down payment of $160,000 that I have to pay back over 30 years. And so I was able to purchase a condo. And so I was able to come back to Alameda because of that program. I know that I know that they're working on housing for teachers in Alameda. I want to see teachers be able to not just rent. I want to see teachers to be able to buy. I'm a Stanford graduate. I've spent money, you know, obtaining a master's degree in data analytics. I have a master's degree in special education, all solely to benefit schools. And, you know, many of my colleagues, of course, who've done those same things, you know, they were able to purchase homes, right? But my mission in life is to stay in education. It's something that I've always wanted to do since I was a child. And so being able to own my own property is life-changing. And there's statistics on this about the fact that when you own a home, you actually have a lot of your social factors increase in terms of health and a lot of different things. And so I want to see that. I want to see teachers and staff be able to afford a home in the city of Alameda. Thank you.
Having a stable home environment not only helps our students, but it will also help keep teachers who are really good at their job here in Alameda. And also it has great climate effects, like all the things that we've been talking about tonight. So I think it's a really good question. I think that as a school district, if you look at our last 2 major land sales that we did as a district, both of those were to the Alameda Housing Authority to build housing and meet our housing goals in the city, and had a set aside percentage that were for workforce housing that our teachers did take advantage of in those. In fact, one's on Eagle and the next one's actually in the process on Eagle. And I hope that as we go through and make that process for any access land that we have, that we still continue to have that relationship and work with the Alameda Housing Authority to build those units. I don't really support the idea of a school district becoming a landlord. I think that there's too many legal and complicated and resource heavy things that happen. And as a school district that's low on resources, it's probably the last thing that we should be doing. Particularly when we have a city that we've partnered with so well that is doing this work. I mean, the idea of our school board, you know, endorsed Measure Z, which would help increase the number of affordable housing and housing here in the district. And at the same time, the state now has a law that matches what we were doing with that. We supported that as a board at that time. We support any of those endeavors and work with the city to make sure that those happen. I think that where we can implement and make it more affordable for our teachers is what I mentioned, is that we're paying for all of their health care right now. We are paying their retirement pensions and all those, and making sure that we do that in each negotiation, making sure that they're having a livable wage and aren't the lowest paid teachers within the county.
This is a really tough issue. As Ryan said, we do have 2 projects right now with the city, both on Eagle, where our staff gets extra points to get into one of those units. So we have done some creative work with the city around this issue. But even the threshold to get into those housing programs is still really high and really hard for folks to manage. We've looked twice at property on the base to try and provide teacher housing. We have barracks quarters that we looked at, and we also thought at one point about selling the old Miller School. We had a developer come in, and we worked with the developer for over a year, and as Joyce said, it didn't pencil out. So finding a developer that can make a profit and still provide the entry-level amount that a teacher can afford or a classified employee can afford is the challenge, and it's a significant challenge in the Bay Area. I will tell you that enrollment is up in AUSD. People are moving here. Families are moving here. I don't know how they're doing it. I could not afford the house that I'm in right now. But it's having a negative impact on the school district because we have less Title I schools because of the gentrification. When I started on the board in 2016, we had 7 Title I schools. That means we were getting supplemental dollars from the state of California to educate our kids. We now have 3, and next year we will have 2. So this is a very real problem on a number of different levels. We used to have a quarter of our teachers living in Alameda, and they're gone. They can't afford to stay here anymore. This is something that we're constantly talking to the City of Alameda about. I sat on the AUSD City of Alameda subcommittee for a number of years. This topic comes up often, and we will continue to try and partner with them as we've done with the Housing Authority to find an option for our staff when it comes to housing.
Around a little bit. We'll do one more question and then hop into lightning round and then closing statements. All right. We know from endless studies and even our own observations that your income impacts where you live, and areas with higher incomes have better resource schools. I've observed it myself. The amount brought in for a PTA fundraiser at one end of the island is vastly different from the other. And only some schools offer academic programs like AP classes. So how do you plan to ensure that AUSD provides equitable access to high quality education for all students, including those from diverse backgrounds and special needs? And what specific strategies would you implement to close the achievement gap and address learning loss across the district, particularly after the disruptions caused by the pandemic? Sorry, that's a loaded one.
Should we done it? Is it okay to ask for you to read that one more time?
Yeah, totally. Sorry.
Just 2 minutes.
All right. 2 minutes. Salt world peace. Okay. I'll ask the question.
Okay.
So how do you plan to, and some of you have touched on this, but let's kind of bring it all together. How do you plan to ensure that AUSD provides equitable access to high quality education for all students across the island, including those from diverse backgrounds and special needs? And then what specific strategies would you implement to close the achievement gap and address learning loss?
Okay, so I'll start with the second half first. So I like to
Call it actually a belief gap. So research shows that actually starting in elementary school, there's biases against many students. When I was in school in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, I was a first grade student. I took a multiplication test. I got 100%. I knew I got 100% because I studied for it, because I like math. The teacher said, "Who do you think got 100%? Even as a first grade student, I knew they were going to pick 2 boys first. And I said, they're going to pick that boy first, and then that boy, and then they're going to pick me third. Nobody picked me. The teacher was so devastated. And she said it was Malia. She thought that everyone else knew. But there's already biases that develop. And in elementary school, most of the teachers are women, yet there's biases that exist. There's actually research that shows that teachers actually grade boys more leniently in math than they do girls. So boys walk away thinking that they're doing better than the girls are. There's so much research around this.
And so it's a belief gap. We have to make sure that we break biases, and that even as a female teacher, I could somehow be imparting a bias to my female students. We have to look at the research and really dig deep and address this. And the second part of the question okay, so as a teacher, I always taught in Title I schools, except for 1 year. And that 1 year that I did not teach in a Title I school, I received so much money from my parents. And it was the pandemic, so I appreciated it, but I think there needs to be a tracking of that in surveys. Also, sometimes special education teachers, resource teachers, interventionists do not have the same amount of money from PTA as other teachers. And there's an equity issue there as well.
I think it's been really evident that there is kind of a divide or a historical divide when it comes. I mean, it's historical here through redlining and many other reasons. But when it comes to the resources for our schools and mentioning of PTAs, when I was PTA president at Edison and then also president for PTAC for a few years, we wanted to figure out how to fix that. And the idea was to create one PTA across the district where everyone's paying into it and then equitably dividing that amongst all the schools. And we knew exactly what would happen. We knew that parents would create a Friends of Edison, and it would be another PTA to fund the individual things that are going on. If you look at what the district funds on these levels, if you look at Edison, they're actually the lowest funded school when it comes to those extra funds as a school, mainly because they have the lowest amount of enrollment of students. And then if you look at Ruby Bridges, they probably have the highest amount of resources going for there. But there is a higher need there. And so then there becomes this gap. What happens on an Edison level is the parents step up to that level and take part in the game. Ruby Bridges has really come a long way, even in the last 5 years, when it comes to that fundraising. But that's a PTA level. When it comes to the district, I think that there isn't anything more paramount in what the lens that they use is the equity that they put in all of our decisions, and making sure that when we're doing a construction project, like we're doing on the football fields, Ensignel's is first. They're going to have the better football field probably for 6 years before Alameda High is. In making those decisions, that sends a message that we're not last on the list. We're not last in the thought process. Like how we go about doing that and how we talk about it has a lot to do with it as well. And I also think that it all depends on leadership at the site level. And I think that we've seen a huge landscape change when it comes to that. And those individual principals and leadership at those levels are changing the game when it comes to our students and equity. She called me hilarious.
I would say over the past 5 years, the way AUSD looks at equity in public education in this community has changed significantly. We created a strategic plan for the first time and literally called out the fact that we need to do better by our kids of color. And in making those express declarations, what went along with it was a change in the way we fund things. And we've done a number of things to really change the way programs are funded so that kids that need the support the most are getting it. One of those examples that I can tell you is we decided to close the middle school portion of Bay Farm School, the 6 to 8 grades, that was costing the district $350,000 a year over a 10-year period of time. That's over $3 million. Both of my kids went there. It was a great program, but we had to have a conversation. Is that really where $3 million should be going, given the need in other areas in our community? We closed that program. People were not happy. We took that money and we funded full-day kindergarten because we know that little learners who need a full day of kindergarten have much better academic outcomes over the course of their educational experience. We also know that for working families, a full day of kindergarten is crucial so that they can continue to go to work. So that's one example of us putting money behind a decision that was equity-based. And we look at these things through that lens, as Ryan said, on a regular basis. Another example of this work is supporting our African American boys with the Scholar Program and providing dedicated funding streams and dedicated funding sources and interventions to those students. And over the last 2 years, we've seen absenteeism decrease, and we've seen academic outcomes increase. So when you put money behind what your value is and you actually fund it, you do see more equitable outcomes, and we have been able to do that lately. And just with regard to the PTA, I was the PTA president at Bay Farm, and one of the things that we did was instead of just giving another school funds, because parents don't like to do that, why should I give another school my kids' money? We literally had those conversations with folks. We spent a weekend, we picked Ruby Bridges, and we spent a weekend and taught Ruby Bridges, taught parents in their PTA how to run a book event and raise money so that they were able to raise their own money. We went and showed them how to do it. And in a weekend's worth of time, we were able to give them a skill set that we were using at Bay Farm to raise incredible amounts of money. So I think our PTA Council talks about this a lot. How can we create a more equitable outcome at the PTA level? And I think that there are ideas like that that are in the works.
Thank you. Well, I may be one of the few people up here who has been very personally touched by this. I remember as a child, as I said, I lived in the projects in Detroit. I remember having the Masons come and bring us Christmas presents because we didn't have Christmas presents, my sister and I. So this issue of growing up poor, growing up in poverty is very personal to me. And I want to say it was education that lifted me out of poverty and brought me to Alameda with the ability to live here and the ability to live a very different life. So I have to say, I'm getting tingles just talking about this because I feel so passionate about it. And my family, they couldn't afford tutors or after-school care or summer programs. That wasn't for us. And so what I do love about the school board is that they're passionate about helping students who need it. And as both Jennifer and Heather Ryan talked about, we've been getting, because Alameda is being more gentrified, we're getting less money, right? That's sort of how the school formula works. So I think what's very critical for us is that the places where parents who can't afford it, for example, after school programs, have to be very highly functioning, and have to provide those services that families aren't able to afford. And I think it's the same thing. I have to say, my son is eligible for the summer program here. If I were going to make changes here, I have not put him in the summer program because I didn't think it was very good. No disrespect to the teachers, they're very committed, but it is very difficult for kids to learn in that summer program, and that's a place where we can make a difference.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to do a quick lightning round. I'm sure you guys are familiar with how our lightning round process works, but we're going to do a rundown of topics, pretty policy focused, sorry. And just give us, Zach, is it okay if they just yell out? Okay. Because you guys also live on Zoom right now and YouTube, so
They can hear us.
Yeah.
They can hear you now, so.
Okay. They're okay to yell out?
Yeah.
Oh, great, okay. All right, so we'll go this way, then this way, and this way, okay? All right. Do you support, on the ballot measure, California Proposition 2, a bond for the state to borrow $8.5 billion for schools?
Yes, I wish they had written it differently because most of the money goes to wealthy districts.
Yes.
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 You guys touched on this, but phone-free schools in California, Assembly Bill 3216, yay or nay?
Yay, it's the law.
I'll say Heather says yes.
Yes.
Having a teenager, yes, yes, yes.
Do you support or oppose Newsom's new Safety Act, preventing districts from telling parents about a student's sexual orientation, gender identity, preferred pronouns, or gender expression without the student's consent?
Teachers should not have to be the ones who have to do that.
It was a lot.
Yeah, it was a double.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So Gavin Newsom's new Safety Act, and it prevents districts from telling parents about their child's student or their student's sexual orientation without the student's consent.
Yes.
Yes, and we've implemented work to make sure that Aries is confidential.
Yes.
Great. As you know, like that is a controversial one nationally, so it's very important for us to know where you stand. All right. AUSD students and families rely on the Alameda Food Bank. Do you oppose or support the lawsuit against the city right now regarding their new building and operations on the base?
100% oppose.
Oppose, and they supply food to our students.
Absolutely oppose.
Oppose as well.
All right, and last one. Your campaign had a theme song. What would it be? We'll give you a couple seconds to think about it.
Ryan's ready.
I'm ready. You want to know why? Because when she did her campaign 4 years ago, I created a playlist. And the number one song on the top of it was West End Girls, because she lives on the West End.
You know, I was going to say, I did improv as well, Ryan. I feel like he's showing me up here. You know, with this.
It's a small stage. It's okay.
That's small. Not room for two of us. You know, boy, my mind is gone blank.
How about
Here you go.
Castles Made of Sand melts into the sea so easily by Jimi Hendrix, who was my cousin.
Oh my gosh! Bring him down.
I would say We Are the Champions by Queen.
That's very nice. I got to pass. I wish my son was here. He's a music.
And actually, sorry, we have one last edition, late edition. Have you decided, and who do you support in the upcoming city council race?
I'm supporting Trish Spencer.
Do you have a second or?
I haven't decided on my second. The other.
And she has to endorse anybody else. I personally endorsed 3 candidates, which was not my plan, but I did that only because I worked with Ray closely in the DA's office. We worked together, and he was one of the few DAs in the office to really embrace the change that the new DA was bringing, and I thought that was really refreshing. But I would, I've also worked very closely with Tishan on Measure E and respect and know that he does his homework.
I too endorse Tushan. I have a long-standing relationship with him, and I haven't decided on my second vote. It'll either be Greg or Michelle.
Great, thank you guys. And before we get to closing statements, can we just give a quick round of applause? How great is it for us to have 4 women candidates running, 2 first-time candidates, and being close to campaigns this election season, we completely know the undertaking. This is for you, for your families, so thank you so much for stepping up to put your names in the hat. Beyond incredible. All right, so now we're going to do closing statements, and I'm going to start with Jennifer, and we'll just work our way back.
2 minutes or 3?
1 minute.
Speed
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you. Can I go, Zach?
Oh, just one second.
Oh.
Wi-Fi here drops, so everyone's trying to barking at me on Zoom.
It's like the internet goes out right before the final inning of the Super Bowl. Oh, wait, it's not any quarter. Sports balls.
Okay, we're back in line.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to everybody for hosting and giving us an opportunity to come talk with all of you about the important work that the school board's doing and the importance of this election. So much rests in the work that school boards do in terms of families and children, and I find the work just incredibly rewarding and important. And I also want to say that I work with an incredible group of people currently on the Board of Education, and we put an effort into governance. We have workshops on governance and on getting along, and that results in efficient meetings, in transparency, and I think that having a school board that is accessible to families, you know, we try and end by 8 and 9 o'clock at night. We don't have meetings until 3 o'clock in the morning like other bodies in this town. But that takes work and leadership, and I think I have a record that supports that, and I would just be very grateful for your support in this election. Thank you.
I'm here tonight to represent Heather because I thought it was really important to have someone representing her voice at this moment, probably in the most difficult moment of her entire life, and at the same time saying, I'm still going to do this is still important. And I agree, it's still important to have her lens, her voice, and her perspective on the board. I don't think that I've seen as much accomplished in a school board in Alameda's history as we have in the last 8 years specifically. And when she said, she was the first person to say, yes, I'm doing this again. There's so much more work to do, and I want to be a part of that progress. And I just wanted to be here tonight to bolster her voice in that. And know that we all bring a different lens, and I think it's important to have those different lenses and who brings something new to the table and something that we haven't been hearing from.
I'm that teacher that a student will call when he gets out of juvenile hall to tell me he's still coming to school that day. I'm that teacher who had 40 students come at 7:30 in the morning for a reading program, and they were all students who had failed 8th grade. I'm that teacher. I'm that teacher that new teachers will come to ask for support, where they can cry, where they can scream, where they can get help and support. I'm that teacher. I'm that teacher where administrators will sit down with me and say, you know, Malia, this is really isolating. Will you just sit and chat with me? Will you, you know, this is hard. This is hard work. I'm that teacher. I want to be that school board director for Alameda. I want to bring that same passion, experience, and expertise to support the families and students and staff in this wonderful city. Thank you.
Well, I have had my children here in the school district for 20 years, and so I've been an Alameda resident that long as well, or longer than that actually. When I thought about running for school board, this was not just a snap decision for me. I started attending school board meetings a year ago. I think Ryan, Heather, and Jen have seen me out in the audience at every meeting except one when I had a cold. Didn't want to infect people. So I have been planning this for a long time. And when I saw there was a vacancy on the school board, I thought that's where I can make my contribution to Alameda. So I come up to date on the issues. I've made that year-long commitment to having this position, and I am ready to lead and ready to join a very well-functioning school board.
All right, thank you again. The candidates are here. We had a whole page of questions we didn't get to, so please come talk to them. Sarah, if you have any special questions. And those of you who are eligible voters in our endorsement, I had a big Red Bull, so you probably should be getting your ballots via email tonight. And we'll be trying to wrap it up probably within 48 hours because we only have so much time to start supporting them. All right, thank you all, and thank you all for coming.
Oh, and there's lots of food, so please help yourselves as you go. We'll probably bring out some to-go boxes.